Dave, it's been kind of a rough week. I don't know. Things have not been going my way, it feels like. And I've turned to somebody who has really helped me get through a very difficult time. And I want to extol the virtues.
Oh, good. Who's that?
Steven Seagal.
Wait, what?
Steven Seagal,
the old actor?
Yes, Steven, the very portly action hero, Steven Seagal. I've needed something ridiculous and unintentionally funny in my life, and Steven Seagal delivers that in buckets full. We have started last night. We actually started watching Steven Seagal movies. Me and my boys. And everyone is as horrible as the one before. He's done tons of them. He's gotten the first couple of movies, he was a bona fide action hero. And then he just steadily got worse and worse. He's getting heavier and heavier. Nowadays, if he's in a movie, he's always dressed in a really long coat that tries to hide
the gut. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He did one movie where he spent the whole point, the point he said he signed to do the movie was that he could do most of his scenes sitting in a chair.
No.
He does these fights sitting in a chair. And
there's so much standing, Brad. Who's here for that?
So if you've really become, we are quickly becoming a connoisseur of Steven Seagal movies, and I highly recommend it. If you need something to make you feel better about your life, they are some of the worst written. They're written in a weekend by a couple of guys on a bender. The plots make no sense whatsoever. The one we watched last night, I've already forgotten the title of it. It opens with a scene where he sits down with this old guy who's the master of knives and blades.
Okay.
Knives and blades, by the way. No idea why they're two different things, but he's the master of knives.
Right. Why?
And blades.
Blades.
And evidently there's in a couple of lines of incredibly poorly written dialogue, it comes out that there's a dispute between his two families. That that guy's family is mad at Steven Seagal's family because Steven Seagal's family did some kind of dirty deal that got land that they weren't supposed to get from the Master of Knives and Blades family. And Steven Seagal looks at him and says,
"From
but
the
here's
chair.
the thing." From the chair. Oh, he's sitting down. and you find out very quickly with a Steven Seagal movie, they don't give him more than 7 or 8 lines of dialogue because he gets winded very easily.
Oh, God.
After 7 lines, he's gasping for breath. And he says, he explains to the Master of Knives and Blades that, yes, his family may have stolen from this other guy's family, but that wasn't me. Do you see how simple this is? He's still living on the land. He still is earning money from all the land. But listen, his family did that, and that is not me. And then it erupts into a fight, a blade fight between him and the old man, who, of course, Steven Seagal very easily vanquishes the Master of Knives and Blades. Now, this brings this entire scene to an end, at which point, this plot point that they establish in the opening scene of the movie is never again referred to, referenced. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Oh, God.
Then the rest of the movie is about this young guy that starts robbing banks so that he can have money for him and his young, hot Asian girlfriend. And they do bank robberies. And we don't see Steven Seagal again until the midpoint of the movie.
Sure. You just want a Saison of Steven Seagal. You don't want too much, Brad. It's just
a little amuse-bouche.
You just want an amuse-bouche of Steven Seagal.
Then they bring Steven Seagal back in for a 5-minute scene where he is sitting with another very attractive young woman, and he's saying, there's something about this fish. They're eating dinner together. People say we shouldn't eat it because fish are very intelligent. And it gets that far, and somebody comes in and interrupts, and turns out there's something wrong with his, crime lord empire or something.
Okay.
The fish has never come back to, the dinner's never come back to. The scene ends, and we go back to the guy who's robbing banks. I'm telling you, I felt so good about myself after watching this movie. So I want to
feel like a genius. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seagal made about 8 movies in 2016 alone. Just in 2016, he put out 8 movies done by movie studios you've never heard of and will likely never hear of again. And
because they were all money fronts. Yes.
Yeah. Had to have been or something. I have no idea. But if you want, and somebody told me this, and so far it has held out, Dave. If you want to do what I do and watch Steven Seagal movies to make you feel better about your life, and to just tune out for a little while, you look for a Steven Seagal movie with 3 words in the title. That's how you know you're getting prime Steven Seagal. You look for the 3-word title.
I can't even think of one title. What's one that has 3 words in the title?
Beyond the Law. End of a Gun, The Perfect Weapon, Code of Honor, Sniper, Special Ops. You look for 3-word titles, and you know A Dangerous Man, Against the Dark. You know you've got Mercenary for Justice, and of course, Today You Die, Out of Reach, Out to Kill, Half Past Dead. That's how. And by the way, I've got his IMDb up, and I've only got down halfway down the list of this guy's filmography. He's making a new film like every 3rd Tuesday. Somebody's got to hide this guy's keys.
Meanwhile, in his personal life, all the movie titles are like senescence, diabetes, sundowning. Like they're all 1-word titles. Because, he moved to Russia. Like Putin loves to trot him out as like this symbol of an American who has chosen Russia over America, And they put him in these karate tournaments and in these martial arts tournaments where, he's got just a whiskey barrel of a gut. And these fully ripped young Russian guys are coming at him full bore. Yeah. And he's just a flick of a wrist and they fall painfully onto the floor. No one can stop Steven Seagal, and it's so painfully obvious. It's so painfully obvious what's happening.
It's the way you play with a toddler. If you watch a Steven Seagal movie fight scene these days, it's basically the same thing you do when you're batting around a 5-year-old on the living room floor. It's the exact same stuff.
It's also like it's the epitome of middle-aged dude fantasy. It's like I can eat what I want and not work out and still be an action star. Brad, sign me up.
Hell yes.
Sign me up, Brad.
Hell yes.
On that note, I want to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab. You signed up for the show about making comics.
And you signed up to make a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of the Webcomics Handbook on Substack and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellogg, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We've got a big show. In fact, I don't even know that we're going to get to all the questions. There's so many good ones this week. They've all come in over at patreon.com/comiclab. But let me jump us into our first question for the week, young Bradley. So this comes in from Casper, and they write in, "Hey, Brad and Dave, have you ever gotten midway through a project and thought to yourself, uh-oh, I'm definitely in over my head. I'm nearly 10 years. Oh, geez. Oh, no. I'm nearly 10 years and 400 pages into my long form comic. In that time, I've gained enough maturity to realize that taking on themes of systemic injustice may not have been the best idea for my first serious comic. Simply put, I don't feel like my skill in writing is developed enough to give the topic a satisfying journey and a conclusion that properly communicates the message I want to convey. Do you think it's better to continue on despite the risks, or would it be wiser to quietly end it and move on to something else? Would love any and all thoughts on the matter. Thanks, you guys." That's coming in from Casper.
Yeah.
I should add, by the way, Brad, there's a postscript that Casper has added. If the additional context helps, this comic has been successful over its run. It's had 3 successful Kickstarters of over $6,000 each and has built a committed following of people invested in the story and the characters. However, it has been on hiatus over the past 2 years due to life circumstances, not a loss of love for the craft of the story. So that would theoretically make it easier to leave behind if it ended up being for the best. So that actually is a lot of extra color that's worth bringing into the conversation.
Yeah.
But Brad, in general, getting to a 10-year point and the 400th page and then going, I might not have the skill set or be the person to tell this story.
Yeah.
What do you make of that, Brad Geiger?
So I'm going to start here and say that my intuition tells me that I think this person is not asking for guidance so much as they're asking for permission.
Oh, what do you mean? Okay, yes.
Listen, it sounds like they've mentally kind of come to a certain place with it where they've reached a certain kind of closure. Sure. It's been fallow for 2 years. And it almost sounds to me like they're asking for permission. Is it okay for me to leave this and start something else?
Oh.
And if you're looking for permission, and you only, Casper, only you can know this, but if you're looking for permission, then permission granted. As the reigning poobah and vice poobah of webcomics, Dave and I can give you absolution and permission. If you want to stop this project and go on to something else, you've got permission.
And you know that we're the reigning poobahs because anytime Brad and I compete in a martial arts tournament, young, strong guys come running up to us, and Brad and I, just with a flick of our wrist, have flipped them over completely. They stand no chance.
And then you hear from the audience, poo, bah.
Oh, I am not a party to that dad joke. I'm removing myself from that dad joke. Okay, but anyway, so permission, that's an interesting idea that what they're asking for in this sense is permission. It's interesting that this comic that they mentioned, it's about systemic injustice because it's a very big, heavy topic, and I don't even need to know what angle or aspect of systemic injustice you are talking about. But as an individual trying to fight or at least turn people's sense of an injustice that is much larger than us, it can feel unsolvable. It can feel like you are a David and Goliath, and in this case, that David is failing against Goliath. That is a unique wrinkle in this, Brad, that, I don't know, is there something there that's worth talking about that maybe it's because the weight of the topic and they feel like they're not changing anything?
Yeah,
that could be it.
I could understand that feeling of despair, certainly. And that kind of brings me to my second point with this. And that is, listen, after 10 years and 400 pages, like I said before, if you are in a place where you're like, I'm just not feeling it. And by the way, the other thing Casper said was this was maybe a bad idea for my first big serious comic, which is why our advice always on this show has been, don't try to take on something huge like this for your first big foray into comics. We really passionately try to guide people towards shorter, more manageable, even if it's like a couple hundred pages, more manageable projects for your first time out. But here's my point about, are you a good enough writer? If you want to write about systemic injustice, unless your point is, yay, systemic injustice, I'm all for it, we need more systemic injustice, I don't know how you can go wrong. There's only one wrong answer, and that's to say, yay, social injustice, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever tact you take for that is going to be a valid tact, and in my opinion, is worth pursuing. But in general, I don't know that I am super thrilled with the idea of backing away from a writing challenge. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. Part of me wants to encourage you in those moments of fear, in those moments of, and I've had plenty of moments when I've thought that I was in over my head in terms of a story. And I've typically gone forward and charged through those. Sometimes I did a good job. Sometimes I didn't do a good job. Sometimes I fell right on my face. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I was somewhere in the middle. And there's a learning aspect of each one of those outcomes that is valuable for a writer. Yeah. Like, okay, let's take the worst case scenario. Let's say you write this story about systemic injustice and there's some flaws with it. You make a couple missteps, a couple mistakes. That's usable. That's going to help you become a better writer in the future. Is learning from that. And I think it is okay to allow yourself to make mistakes and then learn from them. How else are you going to do it? You can't write a pure story. You can't expect purity from yourself. You're going to make some mistakes. And thank God, because those mistakes are going to help you to become a better writer.
Yeah, I think, okay, I want to pull back a little bit because I think there's three different possibilities that are going on here. And it's worth considering this as just a creator. Secondly, as a creator that wants to impact the world with positive change on something that's systemically wrong, right? So that's the second one. And then I think it's the third one, which is a creator that might want or might just be bored. So let's talk about each one of those, okay? Yeah. So one of them is, as a writer, as a cartoonist, you haven't done, let's just say, anything for 2 years since whatever the personal event was that, and by the way, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be mental, it could be physical health, it could be family stuff, it could be business, it could be economics. We've all had plenty of those in our life, so there's zero judgment on that. But it could be a confidence issue about anything that you could be restarting after a 2-year hiatus, where you're just like, do I still got it? I don't know if I have it, right? And then the second possibility is that you are looking at these 400 pages, having stepped away for 2 years and going, did I make any change? Yeah. Did my work impact the world at all? And that's hard because social change, systemic change comes from a million tiny moves. That all of a sudden, it's one of those things that like nothing changes and then all of a sudden everything changes. You know what I mean? That's how systemic injustices get fixed. And you might personally be feeling like, oh, this is wasted. I haven't impacted this issue at all. And that's a hard one for you to grapple with. I would admit that. And then the third one is just, you might just be bored having stepped away from this for 2 years and want to do something else. And that's also fine. Yeah. Right. But what's interesting is, let's imagine just for a second, Brad, as a mental game, that no event caused Casper to step away for 2 years, right? Okay. We don't know, again, if it was financial, if it was physical, if it was mental, it doesn't matter what. But let's say there was nothing. What makes someone go 400 pages into a story, but then the 401st page, they're like, I don't know if I got it in me for this, or I don't know if this is for me. What happened? Like, let's say the 2 years didn't happen there. What could happen where someone just, I mean, that's just a loss of confidence, isn't it? Isn't it a confidence game at that point? Yeah, it's confidence. And it's okay to lose your confidence. I mean, there's that's okay too. And here's the thing. So I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, sorry to finish that thought, is I'm now 15 years into Drive. I am scared of messing it up. Yeah. It's a really good, really fun story. And I'm not shitting you. I am scared of sticking the landing for the ending. And a part of me feels like you're 400 pages in and you're getting closer to the ending. Yeah. And you're like, I'm scared of sticking the ending for this story. And do I have it in me? Or do I have the tools in my toolkit to stick this landing? I'm afraid of it. I don't want to put words in Brad's mouth, but I bet if he's honest about it, when it comes time to wrap up Evil Inc., he's afraid of sticking that landing. No, he's not. Look at that face. Look at that confidence. So a part of me a part of it, I think, is a confidence game here, right? Yeah. I mean, so my takeaway then for this person is actually to repackage Brad's past advice that he's given to someone, which is when you're feeling doubt from something, take a break. Yeah. And you, by hook or by crook, you didn't want to, but you took a 2-year break, right? And a part of me feels like in asking this question, you are looking for permission to say, I took a break and I don't really want to go back. Yeah. My heart of hearts tells me that in the way you phrased this question. And is it okay if I don't want to go back? And the answer is, yes, it is. However, I would say there's value in finishing a project. You kickstarted multiple times for $6,000 at multiple Kickstarters. There's an audience for it. There is value to your art career to finishing a story. Now, does that mean go on for 400 more pages? I don't think so. But maybe if you could finish it up in 50 or 100 pages, I might advise. But I also might advise this. Maybe just do a page or two of the story again, just to see if it feels terrible and icky and foreign and not what you want to be working on, because that'll reinforce the decision real quickly. Mm-hmm. If you do a page and you're like, oh, that was terrible, I don't want to do this. I mean, if you wake up in the morning excited to do it, that's all the sign you need. If you wake up every morning and go, ugh, that's the sign you need that maybe it's time to step away. I mean, Brad, I've been talking too long. What do you think?
Let's take the conversation from this angle, because you said something that really kind of touched off a thought in my head.
Okay.
You said, I'm worried about sticking the landing in drive.
Yeah, I am.
And let's say I decided at some point, because by my conversation earlier, you can tell, I don't know whether I could stop Evil Inc. I could keep going. My thought, my druthers is to keep going, but that's not to say that life circumstances isn't going to mean that at some point I bring it to an end and I start something else, because that could happen too. Sure. So let's say I bring Evil Inc. to an end. Let's say we both bring our comics, our long form story based comics to an end. And what if after you did it, you put it out and you looked at it as a piece and you realized that you did not stick the landing, that you made a mistake, or there was something that, I should have done this, I should have done that. What would you do? And I mean, as a thought experiment, what would you do?
Have I printed the book yet?
I mean, yes makes it a more compelling thought experiment. If I say no, then you're going to say I changed the pages before the book. But let's say
so if I have printed the book and it's all said and done and my work is done, my pen is down, right? It's been 6 months since I last did my last drive page. What I do then is I say I was an imperfect artist doing my best to make imperfect art, and it is what it is, probably, right?
Yeah.
Because I bet Shakespeare on his deathbed was like, I shouldn't have included Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. That was a stupid idea.
Shakespeare on his deathbed. Maybe they both didn't have to die. I could do Romeo and Juliet part 2.
Did I need to have Bonvolio come on stage from stage left? I should have done it stage right. God damn it, that was a bad move.
Doggone it. Did his mother have to kill everybody?
What?
Maybe she could wash her hands.
You know what? The more I think about it, Puck is a stupid name. That's a dumb name for a character. I want to go back and rename him Jerry. That would have been a better name.
Yeah, Midsummer's Night Jerry is a much better title.
So I think there is not an artist alive that finishes a piece of art and doesn't go, God damn it, I wish I could go back and redo that. I mean, The one I always turn to is George Lucas. Commercially, culturally, socially,
yes,
one of the biggest successes in all of the latter half of the 20th century. Goes back and he's like, you know what we need? We need Jabba talking with Han Solo, and Han Solo steps on his tail in a way that makes no goddamn sense. Let's do that. Yeah. And so you're like, he's still fiddling with it because no artist is ever happy with it. And that's instructive to me, because you got to just accept it at one point that you're imperfect,
Yeah, and that you're gonna do your story, and then it's gonna land on its merits.
What would you do if it's not gonna happen? But what would you do if you finished Evil Inc. and you're like, darn it, I should have had Lightning Lady do XYZ.
That would have made up. Yeah. I'll tell you what, I would be. I might be very tempted to go the George Lucas route and do like a subsequent story, like an appendix to the book, and come back and maybe write something that kind of fixes the problem in some way. It would depend on the problem, but I would be very tempted to tinker with it. Like in my mind, and I guess this is like a two different mindsets, but in my mind, the story is never really ever done. Until I'm dead, then the story's done, right? Then there's no more story. But until that, the story's never done until I say it's done. And part of that comes from, I had one experience that I don't think that you had in comics. And that was I've ended Evil Inc. and then rebooted it and relaunched it.
Right.
And there was something about having done that that was kind of like, I can do anything I want with this. I can.
Well, it happened so long ago, you might forget this. I ended Sheldon and rebooted this. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember that, do you?
No.
That happened 22 years ago. There was a monkey in my comic strip called Jum Jums.
Oh, my God.
And
Really?
no one remembers it because those comics don't exist online anymore.
Wow.
It was about 150 Sheldons. Completely got rid of all of them. Started fresh when I went to Keenspot.
Yeah. Oh, my God. No, so I would have never, because I started reading you around Keenspot.
Yeah. So anyway, so I know of what you speak. But here's the thing. Like, I look to my heroes that even Tolkien, by the time he finished that huge, massive story, he went back and he reworked parts of The Hobbit so that it conformed to The Lord of the Rings. And he tinkered with Lord of the Rings so that it fit better with his overall understanding of elven culture. And like, I can't be a nerd about it. But anyway, to our great regret, all of our great regret, he didn't go back and remove Tom Bombadil, which is the stupidest character in all of Western literature. But, you take what you get from your heroes. So to finish off with Casper, Brad, what do you advise? What is your final put a nail in the coffin advice for this 400 pages in and maybe not feeling it? Or do I go back? Or are they not the right writer for this? What do you feel?
I would say if you've got another project that is stealing your attention, I'd say follow your heart and go with the other project. Right? Knowing full well that, this has been like on hiatus for 2 years. It can go on hiatus for another 2 years. You can always go back to it.
Yeah, that's true. Because it's not like they're waiting at the 2-year mark, desperate for that page to update. Yeah. You're still going to have to rebuild even if it's 5 years from now. Yeah.
So you can always go back to it. I think I've got to say, I go back to my original answer. You're not looking for our guidance. You're looking for permission. I say if this is where your head is at right now and you want to leave this aside, leave it aside and go do something else, knowing full well that if at some point you do recapture the passion for this project, you can always, there's nothing that says you can't go back to it.
I really co-sign with Brad. And even though I've given you 3 or 4 reasons why you might be doubting right now, my heart of hearts tells me that the reason why you are asking this question of us after a 2-year hiatus is that you are recognizing that there's a sunk cost fallacy, that even though you spent 400 pages doing this, you're now like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to do page 401. That's okay. And as Brad said, the audience that was there is already dispersed to the wind. You would have to rebuild anyway. So try something else. You're going to have to rebuild 5 years from now if you decide to go back to it. But I and Brad are giving you permission either way you would like to go. Although I think you would like to step away from it.
I think
that's
so
what
too.
I think. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Dave, I've got an update from last week's show, and it's been really bothering me every day since we recorded last week.
Oh, wow, really? Every day?
It's been bugging me. I don't know that we've ever done this before. I want to take another swing at the question we addressed last week, specifically.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because I screwed it up. And it's when you hear how I screwed it up, you'll know why it's been driving me crazy. Guy writes in last week and says, why does Brad update his comic? He does one full page, he splits it into 2, and he posts the top half on Tuesday, and he posts the bottom half on Thursday.
Right. I remember your answer. It was a good answer. You didn't like your answer?
I was fumfering around about the sweet spot or some odd thing. But here's the thing. Here's the answer to that question is a concept that I've talked about on the show 103 times. I've espoused on the Webcomics Handbook on webcomics.com for 15 years. Okay. So the question is, why do you do twice a week instead of once a week? And the answer is, and the sweet spot, I guess I was feeling around for it, pisses me off I didn't. Here's the answer.
Okay, just get to it. Yeah,
here's the answer. FCS. That's the answer. For God's sakes. I have from the beginning, and I'm being totally serious. From the beginning, I've said the best way to post your work on your website, social media, it kind of works the same. Frequent, consistent, significant. FCS. All right.
Right.
As frequent as you can.
Oh, that's key. Yeah.
While maintaining consistency of quality and of schedule, while maintaining that each of the updates is significant. FCS. Right. That's why I publish twice a week. It's my FCS. It's as frequent as I can while I can keep it consistent and each update is significant. It's not FCS to pull that back to 1 because I could do it more frequently by posting 2, right? So 2 updates a week is my FCS. And FCS is something I've talked about on the show so many freaking times. It really bugs me that I didn't realize that this was an FCS question, but it is. FCS, frequent, consistent, significant. It should have been a 1-minute conversation instead of me suffering for as long as I did.
Having been party to that conversation the last time around, your answer last time was perfectly fine. And I don't even think you realize it, but it was a version of SCS.
Yes.
Because you were talking about how breaking it into 2 gives you 2 satisfying beats on 1 page, which in a way is adding significance to a page by giving it like double gum. What's that thing? Oh my God, double bubble. What's the thing that used to go double your pleasure with the gum with the 2 twins?
Oh, that was Wrigley Spearmint Gum. Double your pleasure with double mint gum.
Double mint gum. Yeah. So you basically double mint gum your pleasure on each page by having 2 significant events. That was the most ham-handed way I could have said that. Holy hell.
That's a completely different project that I also do.
Next week, I'm going to come back with an update that's like, guys, last week I made a reference to double mint gum and I want to take a new stab at it because I messed it up. No, here's another thing too, though, is that also it's human. It's human to not, we speak extemporaneously for an hour and not everything is going to, come perfectly. And I think most people are forgiving in that. But also, I think you can't undercut, separate out FCS. The simple fact is you've been doing it successfully this way for X number of years now.
Yeah.
And if it ain't broke, why fix it? You know what I mean? Like for by hook or by crook, you came from a world where we used to update 7 days a week or 5 days a week, right? And you're like, well, I got to do as much as I can. So you went to 2 days a week.
Yep.
And by all measures, it's working. So why change it? I think that's the shorter version of why you went with FCS on this one.
Well, and also because that has been like a consistent thing that consistently works. Doing once a week, it wouldn't be. It would be harder to keep in touch with my audience that way, right?
Yes, that's very true. Yes, that's very true.
But having said that, if 1 day a week is your FCS, then go with it, right? That's why I say there's no one size fits all. That's why I can't, when people say, well, how many times should I update? 3 times a week, 2 times a week? The answer is FCS. And your FCS is going to be different than my FCS.
And just to put a finer point on it, even though I update Drive once a week, I intentionally hire other artists to do Tales of the Drive, which updates a second time of the week.
Right.
To illustrate Brad's point, because I'm communicating more often with my readership. I'm giving them more value. I'm giving them more contact, more frequency, and building that relationship. So yeah, I will co-sign and agree with Brad's FCS. And it reminds me actually what I've always said about Hubba Bubba as a gum, which is that while I'm ham-handedly trying to finish my points. So let me jump in over at patreon.com/ComicLab to our next question, Brad.
Yes.
And this comes in from Dan, who writes, "Hi, Brad and Dave. I know you espouse the use of the crossbar I only for the personal pronoun and contractions containing it. What about when the I is a standalone letter, but not a pronoun? For example, a teacher tells a kindergarten students there are 4 I's in Mississippi. Or a professor explains to the class, I represents interest earned on this simple interest formula. I draw a strip for Computer Programming Magazine. I is generally used for the iterator in a for next loop, but I'd probably write it in lowercase to look more like code. I would use the crossbar I since it still follows the same principle as the personal pronoun. What do you think? This is a fun and unique extension of the question, I think, of the crossbar I rule, because it gets to the heart of the matter, which is two things are competing: clarity of communication and the specific presentational styles of comics. But more importantly, I want to turn this over to Brad Geiger, who's the best one to answer this.
I love this question because it gives us an opportunity to talk about the why behind the what, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
To answer this question, you have to understand why typographers espouse the crossbar I rule. And the reason is, and this really is true for most comic book lettering fonts, and probably all lettering fonts if you really want to break it down. The reason that they don't like the crossbar I used in non-personal pronoun usages is that those serifs, those are the little doodads that hang off at the top and the bottom of the I. Those are called serifs.
Right.
The little serifs push the letters on either side of the I further away and make it harder to kern correctly. So that's why we don't like seeing a serif I as a capital letter I. Like if your sentence starts with the word inside, that serif is pushing that N just a little bit too far away to be kerned correctly, right?
Yeah. And that in turn comes from the specific nature of why comics often defaulted to an all caps font style, which is unlike print, let's say like the New York Times, which opts for some kind of Times New Roman or a version therein.
Yeah.
Most comics were hand lettered, and hand lettering by hook or by crook just reads better all caps. The eye can more quickly scan it and get the core of it. And to Brad's point, once you make that choice, then you have to kern as best you can, trying to avoid the serifs in a capital I.
Yeah. And also, you don't have to worry about your ascenders banging into your descenders with lowercase lettering and all that other stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
But
And
anyway,
an ascender and a descender, for those not familiar in lettering, when you do a lowercase y, the part that dangles down below the sort of plane of where the lettering ends on, that's considered a descender. A lowercase b or a d that has a line going up, that's an ascender. So just for folks that are new to lettering. So keep going, Brad.
So once you understand the why behind the what, then you know automatically that I'm going to tell you that if you're using that I in a situation like you just said, there's three I's in Mississippi, I would feel very comfortable using a serif or a crossbar I in that situation.
Agreed.
Because I don't have to worry about the kerning. The kerning issue isn't there because that I is pretty much standing alone. I would probably first default to using the crossbar I there because, again, conversely, the bigger danger is if I use that in a situation like that, it might look like a number one. It might look like an L.
Yes.
So
L1.
So I can use the crossbar I there and be perfectly comfortable that I'm doing good typography because that's acting the same way a personal pronoun I would act visually, right? I don't have to worry about that kerning.
Right.
Having said that, if you took a look at that, like there are three I's in Mississippi, and you decided to use the lowercase I.
Brad, hold on. I'm so sorry. There are four I's in Mississippi.
Are there four? What happened to that other I? Mississippi. You're right. Four I's.
Well, listen, the only reason I know that is because there's a famous use on the packaging for Big League Chew, which is one of my favorite gums.
Oh my God. Oh my God, Dave, you are really getting a little bit extra with these gum references.
Oh, Brad, this is why you'll always be my juicy fruit. All right, keep going.
Well, listen, before I get a big red message on our screen that says it's time to end.
Oh, I did not see that one coming. Good job. Good job. You got me on that one. All right, keep going.
So, like, if you said you wanted to use a lowercase I wouldn't throw stones at you. But if we're really going typography way, I would think, and I'd have to check Nate Picos's book and see if he's written anything about it. But in terms of like the kerning concerns and stuff like that, I'd be very comfortable with using your crossbar I in that situation.
Very much agree. And in fact, I don't have much to add because to clarify again from the thing I said at the beginning, the two things that guide your use of the crossbar I or the non-crossbar I in comics. Number one is clarity of communication. And by that, I mean clarity of reading and clarity of understanding on the reader's behalf. And then the second one is the specific reasons why comics avoid the crossbar I in standard lettering, which is kerning, as Brad said.
Yeah.
And so in this case, not only am I cool with the crossbar I for super duper clarity, if for some weird reason on a standalone I that's being used as a descriptor on its own, probably in quotes, even if you wanted to use the dotted I, the lowercase dotted I, I'd probably be okay with it. Yeah. Whatever in this specific case gets you the quickest and clearest clarity communication. Good God. Yeah. Oh, geez. I feel like I got wriggling gum stuck on my foot. Whatever gets you to the clearest communication quickest, that's what I was trying to say.
Yes.
I would go with that. And most likely it's going to be the crossbar I. So yes, I will agree with Brad that this is a great exception to the rule.
Just real quick, what was the name of that gum that came in different colors? It had animals and it had stripes and it lost its flavor like in 5 seconds flat.
Because I think they flavored it with like asbestos. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Was it called like zebra stripe or something stripe?
Fruit stripes, maybe stripy stripes. There was something stripes.
Fruit. Stripey. Oh my God, this is a very American specific thing. So apologies to because there's no way they exported that around the world.
It wasn't just me, was it? That gum lost its flavor immediately.
No, it was terrible.
As you were putting it into your mouth, it was losing flavor.
It was also made out of like wood ash and coal preambles, whatever they use to make steel.
It was something else. So Dave, I've got a question that's come in from our Patreon backer, Jay, and you're going to love this. This is a philosophical question.
Okay.
It says, Comics Uncles, we often get asked what we would tell our younger selves. But imagine you get to jump into your studio 30 years from now. What would you tell your older self? What would you tell your older self, Dave?
Tell me, current present Dave, telling my future self?
You get to go in and tell your older self something.
Well, what would I tell that Dave that he doesn't already know?
Nothing.
I mean, unless, God forbid, I'm sundowning already and I've already forgotten half of my life. Like, remember you like cartooning, remember?
Yeah.
Yes, it's time for your pudding.
You can't tell an older version of yourself anything because he already knows everything that you know.
Unless, okay, hold on. Here's one possible, this is a fun thought experiment.
Yeah.
One thing, joking aside, that you could tell an older version of yourself was passions that might have faded that were given up on for all the reasons that we give up on passions in life. Like, I might be able to tell my 70-year-old self, hey, remember that sci-fi idea you wanted to do that was different from Drive and it was blank, 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 and whatever happened? Why didn't you do that? And then 70-year-old self would be like, you know what? The kids are out of the house. I should do that idea. I could see that happening.
Right.
I don't know what else I would say to older me other than like, hey, remember democracy? That was fun. back when we had that.
Yes, I remember that. It was a long time ago. There's a word I haven't heard in a long time.
It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's a name I haven't heard. What would you say to older Brad?
I don't know that I don't know that I'd have anything to say to older Brad. I can't tell older Brad anything that he doesn't already know because he's already been me.
Imagine how cantankerous older Brad would be.
Can you imagine?
Oh, my God.
He probably would kick me right out as soon as I walked in.
Oh, imagine older Brad driving behind younger Brad. That's like an infinite loop of cause and effect of honking. There'd just be so much honking.
The amount of coffee being thrown on that freeway would be unbelievable.
Oh my God.
And the only way to make that question work is to flip it. Like, okay, then you're old. What would you ask your older self? Well, that's the same as saying, if I could go back in time, what would you tell your younger self?
Yeah.
Asking your older self is the same as telling your younger self.
I know what my older self would tell me.
What would your older self tell you?
My older self would tell me, do everything I can to fight anxiety and enjoy these salad days that I'm living in right now.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
My parents are still alive.
Yep.
My kids are healthy. My career is going well. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I should not be as riddled with anxiety as I am, but I think my older self would say, with love in his heart, try to enjoy these days that you're in. These are good days, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm saying that sincerely. There's no joke there. There's no Mentos gum joke coming at the end of that. That's it. I think
Mentos, I call foul on that. That's not even a gum.
Is it Mentos gum? It's Australian, right?
Soft,
what is it? What the hell is Mentos?
Chewy mint. It's a soft, chewy mint. And you eat a soft, chewy mint while you're doing just.
You know what? Now
things.
I want to take it back. Older me would travel back in time and say, "Tell Brad he's full of shit. It's a gum."
You don't need to go back in time to know I'm full of shit.
I know. All right. Well, now tell me what you would. What would 70-year-old Brad say to you?
Take better care of your hair.
Think about it honestly. 70-year-old Brad. The kids have been out of the house now for a few decades. You're in your studio, and suddenly a 70-year-old Brad appears in your studio. What does he say to you?
Yeah, that's a really great question.
And he has all his faculties. We don't need to make any jokes about sundowning or senescence.
Right.
What does he say to you?
Well, first of all, I was not going to make any jokes about sundowning. I'm assuming the older version of me is just as competent as the current version. It's just as spry,
still bench pressing 400 pounds. Sure, we get it. We get it.
That is a good question. I think probably it would be to not get complacent and to know that change is like ever present. That you can't expect things to stay the same forever, and that you're always going to be changing as an artist, and you're always going to be reinventing yourself and trying to figure things out. And just as soon as you get one thing figured out, something's going to change, and that's go out the window. And that there's no use fighting that. There's only one answer to that, and that's to embrace it and to keep fighting forward, because I think as artists, we find so often that we get to a place where everything works and everything is settled. And it's like, okay, it's going to be like this for the rest of my life. I got it all set, right? We hear that from people who listen to the show all the time. Well, you guys are established cartoonists. And we look at each other and we're like, we're not established. I don't know what it means to be established. I've got a longer career, and I've got more things that I can put together because I've stuck around for this amount of time.
Right.
But I know you don't feel established. I don't feel established. We're still trying to figure our lives and our careers out. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I would put a different spin on that, is that I feel established, but I feel like every day, every week, every month, we still have to fight for it, in the sense that it's not like it doesn't get necessary. Well, it does get a little easier. But
you never stop building audience.
Yes. Yeah. And you never have to stop fighting the 1 to 2 or 3% that disappears every month. You know, they have to be replaced every month.
And you're always in audience building mode.
Yeah. But what would older Brad say to younger Brad? Come on, give me more.
I thought I just said.
Well, I know, but I want to hear more. I want to hear wisdom from older Brad, basically.
Older Brad would say, don't get complacent. Don't get complacent. You're always going to be changing. And that's actually a good thing. Change hurts. Change is painful. Change is scary. But you stop changing, you pretty much start petrifying. You start dying. You might as well hang it up.
That's true.
You're going to have to keep changing.
Stay nimble, stay on your toes, keep changing. Yeah, because also there's joy in change, in as much as I personally hate change, but it inevitably gives you new skill sets, new looks on life, new outlooks, all that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm thinking back, like if you snapped your fingers and you asked Dave Kellett to go very quickly, you got 2 minutes to give a pep talk to 20-year-old Dave Kellett, 30-year-old Dave Kellett, 40-year-old Dave Kellett, my advice would probably be the same no matter what decade you picked, which is tell younger Dave, everything is going to be okay. Keep cultivating joy and keep working at the thing that you love. That's kind of what I would say. And also take a really good trip in 2019. That's what I would say to Dave Kellett before. Because you're going to be locked down. You're going to be locked down for 2.5 years. So take a really good trip in 2019 somewhere. You know what? That's the time to go to Japan, Dave, is go 2019.
Oh, yeah. There was a time to go to Japan. It was 2019.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right. You know, the other thing I think I might tell me? Take bigger risks.
Oh, what do you mean? Oh, unlock that. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Meaning the things that you regret. And I don't have many, but the things you regret are the things you didn't do.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
A lot of times the stuff you did, like I did a lot of things that I wish I wouldn't have done, or I wish I would have done them different and stuff like that.
Right.
But those things I might cringe over, or I might go, knucklehead, maybe, I'm not going to do that again. But the things that you regret are the things you didn't do. And I would say especially when you're younger, but also you're always younger than you're going to be. I think one of the things I might tell a younger me is to take bigger risks. Because
that's really interesting. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
So what are we not doing right? Because I'll tell you, the biggest risk I took probably in the last 10 or 15 years was like, just saying, I'm going to start making a documentary. I know nothing about filmmaking. Absolutely nothing. And I'm sure you looked at me when I started.
Yeah.
I'm sure you looked at me when I started and was like, what the hell is he doing? But I made an okay-ish documentary. It's not great, but it's okay-ish. I really like it. I'm really proud of it.
That documentary you made still stands on its merit to this day. And for some people doing what we do, it's a really important historical document.
I will agree with that. You know what? And I don't want it to be too falsely humble. I'm really proud of it. I thought it came out great. Okay. But what I'm getting at is that like, what else did I not do in life because I didn't take a risk?
Yeah.
I will say this. My wife and I were talking about when the kids move out of the house and we can live anywhere we want in Los Angeles. We kind of were talking about wanting to move closer to the improv clubs and the stand-up clubs because in our 60s, we were thinking we might want to go back and do stand-up and improv again.
Really? That's fascinating.
And that's neither here nor there for anyone listening, but I just think like I kind of want to, that's my own personal risk-taking again. Like I won't have been on stage for 30 years at that point, and it will be kind of fun to dust off those old muscles. And because honestly, I was a better writer when I was doing improv, and there was a joy in improv that I just get from nothing else. Like when you land a joke ex nihilo, it's so great,
That's the one thing that is a little bit difficult about being a cartoonist is you never get to hear your audience's laughter. I've said that so many times. Yeah, and there's a
lot more planning than we think there is in cartooning. Like improv is you have a thought, you say the thought gets a reaction,
Lightning. Yeah, it happens immediately. And you get that immediate feedback. And of course, you get the immediate sting of a joke that just fails and lays on the floor and dies.
So you would tell younger Brad consistently, take more risks.
You would say, I think I almost, there's a part of me that wonders if that isn't nigh universal, that an older person looks at a younger person.
People on their deathbed always say they only regret the things that they didn't do. That seems to be a human universal. You're embarrassed or cringed by the things that you did do, but who cares?
The practical version of what we're talking about is when you and I talk to our kids, right? And when I see my kid, and by the way, I'm going to use some examples that have no place in like reality. I'm just giving you hypotheticals. What happens if you've got a kid that's sitting by the phone wondering if they should ask Mary Lou out to prom, right? You say to that kid, ask her out to prom. And they go, well, what if she says no? And you're going to say to that kid, take the risk. because if it happens, it's going to be fantastic. And if it doesn't happen, you're going to get over it. But you're never going to get over is if you don't pick up the phone and dial. Then you're always going to wonder what would have happened if I would have asked Mary Lou to the prom. Right?
Yep.
So like the practical of all of this is how we talk to our kids. And I consistently tell my kids, at least I think I do, maybe they tell you a different story, but I usually tell them, take a shot, take a chance. You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right?
And that's the best Gretzky quote I've ever heard. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah, it's true.
And that's why I think the 70-year-old me would probably tell the 50-year-old Brad Geiger the same thing, because I think some of those truths are universal.
Well, listen, not to belabor it, but what risks are you not taking right now that you maybe should?
You know what? I don't know how to answer that question, because without getting too personal right now, everything in my career is about to get turned upside down. Yeah. And so I don't know I'll tell you this, stay tuned, because you're going to see Brad Geiger taking a lot of risks in the next 6 months. You're going to see a lot of different things, because if the things are coming down the pike that I think are coming down the pike, you're going to see this freaking 56-year-old taking a lot of risks. You're pretty nimble pretty
quick.
So I don't know what the answer is, but I got a feeling by the end of next year, we're going to know what those answers are.
Yeah, I will say this. I take a little bit of comfort in, there's a Toni Morrison quote. She was a genius. And I'm going to bastardize the quote because I don't actually remember it, but I don't remember like word for word the quote. But the idea is that, you only get one pass in this life. And the bastardized version of the quote is, don't let the motherfuckers steal your joy. And I say it with a harsher word than she chose, because she was far more eloquent than I will ever be. But the idea is that even because I'm sort of fighting through a depressive patch at the moment, and it's hard for me to work, and I'll just be honest about that in terms of there's ups and downs in life, and I'm currently fighting through a dark one. But I love the idea of don't let them steal your joy. Is that they can. The forces that be in the world can get pretty dark pretty quick, but you have the power to let them steal your joy if you let them. And I'm really trying to have my work remind me that life can be joy-filled even in crappy moments, Mm-hmm. And I feel like the way that I would tell my 20, 30, 40-year-old self, it all works out in the end, it's okay. Keep cultivating joy is what my 70-year-old self would tell my current self.
Yeah.
Is keep cultivating joy. It all works out in the end,
Yeah, because I think some of those things are universal. We've got time being a flat circle. Have you noticed that you just, in certain ways, you keep solving the same problems over and over again?
Oh, yeah.
Just in different versions.
And every generation thinks that they are new to this, and history smiles back and been like, we've been here before, my friend. Yeah. We know where the end result of doing this, that, and the other gets you. So anyway, I love how that we took the question that asks us specifically what current us would tell future us. And we're like, man, hell with that. What would future us tell current us?
That's because we
didn't answer the question at all.
I stand by my original comment. There's nothing that we can tell our future selves, because they already know it, because they've already been us.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There's no way to answer that question without taking it in reverse. Well, let me ask you the reverse then,
because let's extend this question. What would, just for funsies, what would 25-year-old Brad tell you that you don't know right now?
Nothing. I know everything.
You don't think 25-year-old Brad would have anything to add to you? I'm just being devil's advocate. You don't think they have anything to give you?
I know everything 25-year-old Brad knew, because I was him 20-some years ago.
Yeah, but that 25-year-old Brad is still fresher in his hopes and fresher in his dreams. And like, you know what I mean? I'm being quite sincere. Like, he hasn't been beaten down as much by life and time and tide.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't think there's any sort of additive that 25-year-old Brad could give to you in your life right now, or no? And by the way, no is a perfectly healthy answer.
I'm not sure what he like 25-year-old Brad was still working in newspapers. right? So what's he going to say? Well, make sure you become the graphics editor at that newspaper. Well, sorry, 25-year-old Brad, that's going to go all to shit.
Turns out newspapers are for the shit can.
25-year-old Brad still wanted to be a syndicated cartoonist. Well, sorry, 25-year-old Brad. Being syndicated today is not great. Not great. Because, again, they rely on newspapers. Right. So much of what 25-year-old Brad, the world that 25-year-old Brad lived in is so different than today. I don't know what he's going to tell me that I don't already know.
Yeah, you're right. The conditions that our younger selves were operating in and the systems that our younger selves were operating in have so changed. Different. Like trying to explain to them what Blue Sky or Threads or Instagram is, they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what happened to all the newspapers? Where'd that go? And you make your money doing what?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. So you're right. We would have all their skill sets and knowledge plus all the world and history knowledge that we have experience. Now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is one of the first times where we've taken a reader's question or a listener's question and been like, nah, we're answering this our own way.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. But there is something to be said for the fact that our life experience is cyclical. Like we keep kind of doing the same things over and over again, and we learn and then we keep going because it feels like I've been in this place before.
What do you mean?
This place where I look at you and I say, you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
My dumbass thought you were being sincere about the next point you were making.
Oh my God, I caught you by surprise with that?
You absolutely won. In the long game that we've been playing, which is the outros, you just won.
Wow.
Oh my God, Brad. I've got to tell you that your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, who just pulled off a 6-year con that he's been working on. I was legitimately asking you a follow-up question. I want you to go back and listen. He is the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
And my close personal friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the still wonderful comics documentary Stripped, and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And a huge shout out to our co-sponsors this week of Comic Lab. That's Blackjack Gum and Beeman's Gum, two brands that very few Americans have heard of. I was trying to think of more gums that I had on my list, and that was it. Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton over at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by the ever-wonderful, ever-kind, ever-talented Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, and you may hear us read your review on a future episode like this one. Dave, finally, after long last, somebody wrote us a review on Apple Podcasts. Oh my God, we had a little bit of a dry spell there.
But
this is wonderful. This person sounds like they started from the beginning because they're just getting to some really great episodes. Listen to what they say.
All right.
This one says, the French.
Wow, that's a callback.
Yes.
Oh boy.
I discovered Comic Lab from a recommendation from a Startup Founders podcast. I wonder what that is.
A Startup Founders podcast.
I wonder I'd love to know what they said about it.
Boy, life is interesting sometimes.
Yeah.
Keep going, yeah.
And I've been hooked on it ever since. The friendship between Dave and Brad is infectious and delightful. I'm not a comics creator, but I'm still learning a lot from you two and your journey. I'm currently catching up and just got to December 2020, and I'm listening to an episode a day, sometimes two. And maybe I'll hear you read this review in like 200 days from now when I'm finally caught up. Thanks for doing what you do. This is probably my current favorite podcast.
Oh, wow. That's really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And I got to say, I appreciate that they described our friendship as infectious because I don't know that we ever told the story where you and I shared that hotel room at the Charles M. Schultz Museum. And somehow, I don't want to blame anybody, but somehow I caught hand, foot, and mouth disease from that quick stay. So, yes, the friendship has been infectious.
In that it festers and pusses.
And I will say Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So I will go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/no joke. I always wanted to be the cartoonist for Bazooka Gum.
Oh, so did I. I'm like, oh my God, all those people would read me and eat gum? That's hard as a rock?
Hard as a rock, and the jokes were always like, the duck would be like, not if I have anything to say about it, and that was the punchline. You'd be like, what? What the hell are these jokes?
Hey, Joe, you forgot your baseball glove. I know, I'm a bowler. Is it true that you got hand, foot, and mouth disease?
No, God, no. What are you talking about? The joke was that it was an infectious friendship. For God's sakes, Brad, go with it.
Oh, I was going to say, because you were only supposed to get one of those. Okay, now you can stop it. I didn't know whether that was going to be funny or not.